Today, we're going to talk about a story that is incredibly difficult to tell, but one that absolutely must be remembered. We're looking at the Bhopal Gas Tragedy, a single night that unleashed a nightmare on a city and became the world's worst industrial disaster. So, let's set the scene. It's December 2nd, 1984, in Bhopal, a city in the heart of India. It's a normal night. Families are at home, sleeping. They have absolutely no idea that just miles away, an invisible killer is about to pour out into the air. Just imagine that for a second. Being woken up, not by a sound, but by a feeling, a burning in your eyes and lungs. You run outside for fresh air, only to find the air itself is the poison. This quote from an eyewitness really gets to the pure terror of that night. So how does a perfectly normal Sunday night just spiral into a catastrophe of this scale? Let's break down how it all started. It all began at the Union Carbide pesticide plant. Right after midnight, a chemical reaction blew, releasing this massive, dense vapor. Now, this wasn't like smoke that rises up and blows away. No, this gas was heavier than air. It hugged the ground, flowing like a river through the streets, silently seeping into thousands of homes while people were completely defenseless in their sleep. To really get how something this horrific could happen, we need to rewind a bit. Because this wasn't some freak accident. This was a disaster waiting to happen, the result of years of cutting corners and ignoring some very, very clear warnings. Okay, so back in the late 60s, the American company Union Carbide set up this plant in Bhopal. This was part of India's push to industrialize. And it was a big deal. It promised jobs, it promised progress. And for a while, it looked like a good thing for the city. Now, the key ingredient for their main product, a pesticide called 7, was a chemical called methyl isocyanate, or MIC. And you need to understand, this stuff is unbelievably dangerous. It's incredibly reactive, it's volatile, and if you breathe it in, it's lethal. The plant stored massive quantities of it in huge tanks. And this is where it gets just infuriating. Look at this list. There were multiple safety systems in place, specifically designed to prevent a leak, but nearly all of them were either broken or had been turned off just to save a little bit of money. The refrigeration system to keep the highly reactive MIC cool? Switched off. The flare tower that was supposed to burn off any leaking gas? It wasn't working. The chemical scrubber to neutralize the gas? Out of service. And for years, workers had been complaining about leaks and dangerous conditions, but they were just ignored, time and time again. With every single safety net gone, it really wasn't a question of if a disaster would happen, but when. So now, let's turn to the night itself and really try to grasp the sheer scale of the tragedy that unfolded. So here's the trigger. The moment it all went wrong. Water, just plain old water, got into one of the storage tanks, tank 610. It mixed with over 40 tons of MIC, setting off a violent, out-of-control chemical reaction. The pressure inside that tank just shot through the roof, the safety valve blew, and that massive, deadly cloud was unleashed into the night. The impact was immediate, and it was catastrophic. While the official numbers were low at first, it's now estimated that more than 15,000 people died either that night or in the weeks right after. By the time the sun came up, Bhopal was a city just littered with the dead. It's just unimaginable. And that horrifying number, the death toll, it doesn't even tell the whole story. Over 500,000 people were exposed to that poison cloud. The city's hospitals were completely swamped in a matter of hours. And the doctors, they had no idea what they were even trying to treat, because Union Carbide refused to release crucial information about the gas and its effects. For the people who survived that night, the suffering was far from over. It was really just the beginning of a lifetime of pain. The gas left a devastating legacy of long-term health problems. We're talking chronic lung diseases, blindness, neurological damage. The poison literally seeped into the next generation, causing a wave of miscarriages and children being born with heartbreaking birth defects. You see, the gas cloud might have vanished, but the disaster, it never really ended. For the survivors and their families, the decades that followed have been one long, relentless fight for justice, for accountability, and for a clean, safe place to live. So what about justice? Well, this part of the story is just as tragic. In 1989, Union Carbide finally reached a settlement with the Indian government for $470 million. But when that money was divided among the hundreds of thousands of victims, it came out to about $500 per person. $500 for a lifetime of suffering and loss. It was seen as an absolute betrayal. And what about real accountability? Well, that never came. The chairman of Union Carbide, a man named Warren Anderson, was actually arrested when he came to India shortly after the disaster. But he was released on bail almost immediately. He fled the country, went back to the U.S., and lived out the rest of his life, dying in 2014 without ever facing a trial for his role. And unbelievably, the poison is still there. The factory was just abandoned, never properly cleaned up. To this day, it's just a rotting, toxic ruin. Dangerous chemicals continue to leak into the soil, poisoning the groundwater that thousands of people still rely on for drinking, for washing, for everything. It's a health crisis that just never stops. So, did anything good come out of this unimaginable tragedy? Well, if you can call it a silver lining, the sheer horror of what happened in Bhopal did force some change. India passed much stricter laws to regulate hazardous industries. And on a global scale, it served as a brutal wake-up call, pushing companies everywhere to at least rethink their safety standards. But that brings us to the really big question, the one we all have to ask ourselves, right? Decades later, in a world where profits are so often put ahead of people's safety, where corporations can still dodge accountability, have we truly, really learned the lesson of Bhopal? The story of Bhopal is so much more than a historical event. It's a warning. It's a story of corporate greed, of profound injustice. But it's also a story about the incredible strength of the survivors. It is a story that we have a duty to remember, never forget.